We have not seen violence or vandalism against Supreme Court justices. We have seen it at Catholic churches. That's unacceptable. The president does not support that. We have seen it at some conservative organizations. That we don't support that. And we certainly call for, we know the passion, we understand the passion, we understand the concern. But what the president's position is that that should be peaceful.
Abort! 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 Abort!
This was the scene outside Justice Alito's house last night. Around 100 demonstrators. He's at least the third justice targeted. The Senate has voted to expand security for justices' families.
Look, the polling should be clear on this. 100% of Americans and Democrats in positions of power should say no incitement, no intimidation. And that's what's happening here. They are not protesting an actual Supreme Court decision. They're trying to sway it and change it based on last week's leak. And it really is a very chilling moment for us. America was founded on dissent and disagreement, and we should cherish that as Americans. Thomas Jefferson said, opinion is power. We all believe that. But this is next level. And as usual, this White House wants us all to believe what they say, not what we see. And I think every Democrat running for office this fall should be asked the question, when does life begin? Is there an abortion you think is not a good idea? Are you for eighth month abortion, taxpayer-funded abortion, fetal pain abortion? They're the extremists on this, and now they're taking those extreme views right to the doorsteps of our Supreme Court justices.
That was former Trump administration advisor Kellyanne Conway, desperately hoping you won't remember that the Republican Party incited a violent attack on the government just over a year ago. Conway insists that the current protests outside Supreme Court justices' homes are in fact a violent attack on the rule of law by out-of-control Democrats. But Conway and Republicans felt much differently in 2019, when far-right conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer was twice detained by police for jumping security fencing at the homes of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and California Governor Gavin Newsom. At the time, Conway and the GOP were silent. Not only did they not condemn Loomer, they offered her an even larger platform by nominating her as a Florida congressional candidate in 2020. But Conway would prefer not to discuss that. Conway's gripe is that protesters aren't exercising their rights in a way that's convenient for Supreme Court justices. She'd like to see activists protest outside the Supreme Court, and activists agree they would love to, except that the Supreme Court recently installed metal security fencing that entirely blocks off designated protest areas. So, prevented from protesting, activists have taken their marching orders from a strange source: Republican Chief Justice John Roberts himself. Attorneys on the left are pointing to an important line in the court's 2014 McCullen v. Coakley decision, which ironically banned safety buffer zones meant to protect women at abortion clinics. In that decision, John Roberts wrote that it is no accident that streets and sidewalks have developed as venues for the exchange of ideas. Roberts goes even further, endorsing the idea of protesting on public streets specifically because it makes protest harder to ignore. On the street, Roberts writes, a listener often encounters speech he might otherwise tune out. This aspect of traditional public fora is a virtue, not a vice. The protests going on outside the homes of Justices Kavanaugh and Alito may be loud, but they follow the exact advice for protesting that the Supreme Court unanimously supported in its 2014 decision. And the question remains, who are Republicans to lecture anyone about trying to influence the judiciary? Just this week, Republicans in Montana and Louisiana openly advanced the idea of impeaching and removing their entire state Supreme Court until they find judges willing to overturn rulings that protect abortion. That would be a staggering attack on the independent judiciary. Again, Conway and Republicans don't want to talk about that. Republicans have been influencing the judiciary for longer than most Americans have been alive, through a mix of right-wing legal foundations and the capture of the federal courts by Mitch McConnell and a generation of Republican senators. There's a reason spin masters like Kellyanne Conway are out in force to convince people that peaceful protests in support of abortion rights are more dangerous than the men and women taking those rights away. Activists must not be silent. These protests aren't just morally necessary, they're the Supreme Court's own words in action. What better tribute?